everyone. We're so excited for Service Day. 20 years ago, our guest speaker stood on this stage where we are today, celebrating the best day of the year, and now she's back. Miss Gutierrez graduated from Columbus Academy in 2005 and was a former Service Board president.
She's a graduate of The Ohio State University with a degree in sociology and public policy, and she was in the John Glenn Civic Leadership Program. She also attended Capital University Law School, where she received her JD in Children and Family Law.
In 2019, she was appointed by the governor to serve on the state's Early Childhood Advisory Council. She has experience as a lawyer both in private practice and as a policy advocate at the State House.
And today, she is the president and CEO of Groundwork, Ohio, a nonprofit organization that focuses on the support of families with young children. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you guys, and congratulations on all your work. I was joking with some of the folks before now, but Columbus Academy put out on social media that I planned this 20 years ago, and I really had to take a moment because it's been a while, but it's lovely to be back. So, how many folks had a hard time getting here this morning? Like, did anyone have a bad morning? Okay, good. So when I planned Service Day, I actually had an offender bender on Cherry Bottom Road. And so I'm just here to say, if you had a bad morning, it's still going to be a great day. And it's a real gift to be back here and share with you a little bit about what I do. And usually I don't get to talk about me, I usually talk about everybody else and all the work that we're doing. And I want to share a little bit of that, and then share and see what I can impart on you, and maybe we can have a conversation since it's a nice intimate group today. So, thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm also just going to warn you, I'm pregnant, and at ease sitting, I'm sometimes out of breath. And so if I seem out of breath, it's just because I'm growing human, and you'll forgive me for that. But I always share a little bit just about my family, kind of my why. The work I do is focused uniquely on young children and families. And I have two of my own. I'll have a third here soon, but I report to a board, and lots of other folks have expectations of me, but this is David and Arlo, and so they're the most important. A little bit about Groundwork, Ohio. We're a statewide early childhood public policy and advocacy organization. So what that means is there's about 12 of us. We're a leading team. We're based in Columbus, and we spend a lot of time at the State House translating community needs, challenges to state policy to try to make sure that public policy is accountable to young children and families and their needs. And just a little bit about kind of the science behind why we would focus on the prenatal to 5 period of time. And you probably know this if you have siblings, if you're watching this in your community and your families, but during the first 5 years of life, there's an incredible period of brain development. In fact, you're making 1 million neural connections every second. And so it's a really unique time to be able to invest in young children because it's truly building the foundation of their lives. If you think back to your childhood, think of the experiences you're having now, that is the foundation that you stand upon. And young children in Ohio can either have really positive experiences or they can have negative experiences within their environment based upon the loving and nurturing relationships they have, the resources they have access to. And so the reason why our mission focuses uniquely on young children and families is because we think public policy is pretty behind with the science. In fact, we don't invest enough in those first 5 years. And if we did, we would really reap the benefits. So this chart shows you that public investments in the first 5 years of life can prove a return on investment of 13%. So for every $1 public dollar, the return is $13. And that is because if you can match what we know about brain science with those investments in public policy, we can have incredible savings over the life course. So if you get the early intervention you need, you may not have to have remedial or special education services. You're more likely to be successful in your academic career and your long-term academic attainment. So just a little bit about what the alternative is. Right now, when we fail to invest in young children and families, which really motivates my work, is right now we know that most kids at the age of 5, when they enter kindergarten, aren't ready to learn. This data is just a little bit dated. The most recent school year, 65% of all Ohio children enter the kindergarten classroom not ready to learn. So that makes me think a lot about what experiences 0 through 5-year-olds are having during those periods of time that are leading them to not be ready when they enter that kindergarten classroom. And one of the challenges, like I said, is if you don't invest and have that strong foundation, oftentimes the disparities that really begin early, in fact, low-income peers can be up to 2 years behind their higher income peers at the kindergarten level. You're really not able to close that gap as you grow older, especially if the conditions that led to you being behind aren't remediated. So if you continue to live in poverty, if you continue to not have those relationships and connections that you need to keep growing. So that's why you don't need to, memorize this chart, but that's why we follow evidence, we invest, and we try to get policymakers to invest in those first 5 years so that more young children in Ohio are healthy and ready to learn and that every young child reaches their full potential. And we do so through a pretty comprehensive policy agenda setting process, which means we're convening with stakeholders all across the state, families, early childhood professionals, business leaders, local elected officials, to understand, again, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and how to translate that into state policy. So thanks for learning a little bit about Groundwork. Of course, you can always feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in learning more or engaging or interning or whatever it may be. A little bit about my path through service. So I was a lifer here. I think I was one of the few classes of girl lifers that graduated. And I was in the service board, president my senior year. I was captain of a very low performing, but very fun volleyball team. I was the lunch lady in the high school musical, and have so many fond memories of service. But I think that one thing that I was so grateful for is just having the opportunity to have different experiences here and be able to kind of grow in that path, even if I didn't have all the information that I do now. One thing that was really pivotal to me as the college counselor at the time, in addition to Mrs. Denny's mentorship, had identified that there was a high school internship and a program through the Glenn School at the Glenn School of Public Policy at Ohio State. And I was placed in Senator Ray Miller's office. He's an Ohio senator here locally. His district covered downtown Columbus. And then I was a high school intern. I worked there as a college page, which is a specific position at the State House for college students. And then I was asked to be a senior legislative aide. And so I'll just impart to you is that you don't have to have it all figured out. But don't take for granted these experiences because, for instance, the vice president Groundwork, who just joined our team, I met her at the State House in those first few years that I was there as an intern. So, and that's what I'm working with today. So don't take for granted those opportunities because I still am deeply engaged in that work because of that experience. So I went on to OSU. I actually planned a campus-wide service event at OSU, which is many more kids, and the logistics were, I think, much more challenging. And got my degree, and I was really looking for the path of most resistance. I knew I really wanted to change the world, which, you all should want to do. We all are doing every day. But I thought how I could challenge myself, whether it was a teacher or a social worker, and I wound up going to law school, and I was in private practice for about 5 years. During college, I continued my Meals on Wheels route. I started in high school, and I was part of a sorority, but I was the service chair. So I was the one waking everybody up to go do the thing on Saturday or Sunday in college. And when I got to law school, I continued to work at the State House. So having that experience, not just kind of academically, but always having those outside experiences to keep me grounded in what was happening in the community was I think always a driving force. In private practice, I was really focused on supporting families at their worst moments. So divorce, custody battles, when child welfare was engaged, so in abuse, neglect, dependency cases of young children. And I was really grateful for the work I was doing, helping individuals family by family. And at the end of the day, I recognized that I worked in this system that was much bigger than any one family. But at the end of the day, I also didn't have kind of the time, energy, resources to change that system. Many people change the system from within. I decided to return to those experiences I had in the public policy space to really focus on prevention instead of those crisis moments with individual families, and focus on how we could change policy to impact many, many families across the state so that they didn't have to get to that crisis point. What supports do they need so they don't have to be in these crisis situations? And that's really what continues to drive me, is holding policymakers accountable to focus on prevention, which is very hard because state lawmakers are only in office for 2-year, 4-year terms, and getting them to focus on very little kids who don't vote, who don't have a voice if we don't have one, is very rewarding but very challenging, especially in our environment. So my little takeaways for Service Day, and you have the context of kind of my work and experience, is number one, just to get curious and know you don't have or need all the information today. I remember our Service Day, we served up a meal, and after serving up a meal to housing insecure folks, I remember both men and women, so I'm not sure exactly where we were at. But then adjacent to where we cooked the meal was a church. And the church had these religious figurines, Jesus, Mary, and the woman who was giving us the tour had so much pride in the fact when she told us that these religious figurines had always been white, their skin had been white. But over time, they had aged and the skin had become brown, their skin had become brown. And the point of pride was connected to the fact that she said those religious figurines had changed with the community. So the community had previously been predominantly white and had transitioned to predominantly black and brown families. And at the time, I didn't know why. I didn't question it, just thought it was an unusual thing, and it stuck with me all this time. Now later, I learned about redlining and discriminatory practices of the federal government, back in the 1930s. You can do some research on this as to why mortgages were available to some areas and not others. And learning about redlining provides me with more context. I didn't have all the answers for why that community had changed. It just stuck with me and I kept curious. So I think just keep an open mind to the experiences you're having, because you never know kind of what will stick with you and how that will motivate you throughout time. We also just, some other kind of metaphors are, we focus a lot in the work I do on root causes. So what's really under the surface? Because oftentimes you're seeing the tree and you're not seeing the roots, but really get curious about those interactions you're having with families, whether it's you're serving food or the other activities that you're engaged today. They have a need right now in front of you that you're meeting, but what are the root causes of those? Maybe have a conversation about what those might be. The tip of the iceberg, again, like similar to the root analogy, you're only kind of seeing what's on the surface. And we often talk about big social problems in relation to this iceberg. So I do a lot of work to prevent infant mortality. That's an infant dying before the age of 1. And what you see is we have one of the worst infant mortality rates in the nation, in Ohio, with more babies dying in Ohio than most other states. So that's what we're seeing, but underneath the surface is all of those systems that are leading to the conditions by which a baby doesn't make it to their first birthday in the state. So just question and get curious on that full picture and keep peeling back the layers of the onion, even though you're not going to see them, and these experiences you have now may just mean something different as you learn more over time. My second takeaway is respect the experts. So look around you. You're all experts. If you're expert on nothing else, you're the expert of your own life. You know you the best. And one thing that's been really important to policy advocacy work is the recognition that oftentimes when decisions are being made, the people that the decisions impact aren't even in the room, right? So we've done a lot of work in my organization to engage families in the decisions that so deeply impact their lives and the lives of their children. And it's a real shift in mindset because you guys all are here I have some degrees, you're going to continue to get degrees and acquire skills and knowledge and expertise in different spaces. But know that when you're interacting with families or providing a need today, that the people you're looking at, they're experts too. And if they're experts in nothing else, they're the experts of their whole life. And I can tell you, when working with families, they know what they need. And they may not use all the solution that a public health expert would use, or the terminology, but they can identify what their need is, what their problem is. So we work a lot on co-creating solutions with families. So please just respect your experts and know that they're all around you. But finally, my takeaway is use what you have when you have it, and don't forget that you always have a voice. So right now, you're going to get your hands dirty. You're going to be cooking or organizing things or building today, and that's the skill you have now, but you also have all of these skills in the future that you're going to acquire. And I think a really rewarding part of my professional life is just meeting people who are in careers like, I never wanted to be an accountant, but there's an accountant, that I see regularly that's really deeply engaged in their community. Everyone has different motivations, and they want to bring different skills to the table, whether it's a board table or to a community organization or a nonprofit. So just keep in mind how you can continue to act, and think about how you can get farther upstream. So you may be meeting that immediate basic need today. I keep saying you're serving people, but I do know a lot of you guys are going to places where you're providing food in some way. But you're meeting that basic need. Think about how you can get farther upstream. What the goal of most nonprofits or most nonprofit leaders would say is like, I hope our organization doesn't exist in 20 years. That's probably not realistic, but you want the need for that to not be existent because you want a greater solution to the problem, and you guys are the problem solvers. So when you're having that individual impact kind of downstream, one family at a time, how can you think about changing the conditions upstream, whether it's policy or otherwise, to solve that problem so that basic need is met And then what you do have now, that you always have, is your voice. And so as a policy advocate, I would be remiss to say, even if you do deep community work, you run a community program, you're a physician, you're running a nonprofit, you always have the ability to use your voice. So both voting and engaging with your policymakers to be a translator, to be a messenger for your community about what their needs are is so very important. So if you get emails or you're getting text messages, whether it's from organizations or political campaigns, the organizations that you're helping today, they need your help in other ways. Certainly I know they need resources. They also need you to advocate for them when they're trying to change these upstream solutions or change policies. And there's always an open line for you to be an advocate to your state policymakers. So I'm going to end with that. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope some of those are helpful to you.
So he's calling you Lynanne, so I'll call you Lynanne.
Please. You should all call me Lynanne.
It's, we've seen the data, and you showed again how much of a return on investment it is to fund children, right? And it's cheaper to do that than to do a lot of things later, like little prisons. Why do you think that data is so compelling? Why is it so hard to get lawmakers to support that sort of investment?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we think a lot about it. I think first is that, and I started to mention this, is that lawmakers, whether you agree or disagree with them, come into a situation where they are asked around all different issues. They have issues in their community ranging from whether it's childcare or early childhood to whether solar power can be in their, can enter and become part of their community. So they wind up becoming like a generalist. They rarely are able to build expertise in any one space because they're answering just so many needs in their community. So I think that's one piece. And particularly with term limits in Ohio, it doesn't allow people to stay and be able to really grow in a job before they have to go out and campaign again. And I think often when policymakers are campaigning, they're having to play and respond to the broad range of constituents within their party or those that they're trying to attract to get their vote. And they're often playing to parts of their party and can't be as engaged, and even if they wanted to be engaged in early childhood issues more. Particularly with children, you know, I'm a registered lobbyist, and about half of our team is, and we have a lobbying team. And lobbying just means you, in addition to advocating for something, that you are asking for a specific influence on legislation. You want a policymaker to vote yes or no on this policy. We don't have a lot of resource and power behind that, so lots of other industries have much more organized, whether it's unions or lobbies of the professionals and people that are invested in that industry, and those interests can be very powerful because they have money. So particularly as a 501c3, we are nonpartisan, so we have to make progress regardless of who the policymaker is. But there's lots of other kind of organizational tools, other organizations that can invest in and hold policymakers accountable, but it is hard because we don't have those same lobbies or special interests or resources behind young children, and young children don't vote themselves. And oftentimes, you know, our vision is that every young child has the opportunity to reach their full potential, and many times the families who are struggling the most, in order to reach that goal for every child, we have to really target our efforts on the children who have the most needs, whether it's driven by economics, race, disability, or otherwise. And many of those families, especially in the earliest years when you're a parent, have the least time to express their points of view and really advocate for themselves beyond kind of getting beyond the day-to-day, making ends meet, making sure dinner's on the table, getting to a pediatrician appointment. So those are some of the challenges. I think in Ohio too, this is, you know, there's a lot of concentration of power, and there's few and far between outside of the governor who are really focused on young children and families. So again, getting their attention and priority on this issue has just been very, very challenging.
Two-part question. First one, as a high school senior, hearing your story, how you've been involved, specifically working in the local and the state house, what would your recommendation be for someone who's like interested in civic engagement, but really doesn't know where to start? Like, is there like a website or an Instagram page that you can look like, oh, here's all the options for me to get into? So that's the first part. And then as the alumni director, I'd be remiss to not ask you, what was your junior speech that week?
Okay, so on first, I mean, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to say go to groundworkohio.org. but seriously, we need more young people talking about the needs of young people. Like, you guys are the experts of your own life. You're the closest to being this birth through 5-year-old, and so you and your parents are such key advocates in this work. So we have a lot of opportunities to engage, even if it's you get our newsletter and you're learning about policy, and then we have an advocacy alert. So you can take like 2 minutes to click an email and put your address in, and it's sending a policymaker a letter to you. But there's lots of opportunities. Another alumni, Michael Corey, runs the Franklin County Human Service Chamber. There's going to be lots of efforts to get out the vote. So I think engaging with the Franklin County Human Service Chamber's website and ours, and if you have a specific interest, I can connect you with a local or statewide organization that would really kind of bridge kind of your interest or passion and how to then be engaged in those next steps. And my junior speech was I was in the beginning of the school year, and the three of us, it was scheduled on September 11th, and I was a freshman during September 11th and watched it here in the high school on the TV in my homeroom class. And so I wasn't really clear, but I felt like one of the three of us that were going that day really needed to reflect on the events of September 11th. And so that's what I did. in my my high school attempt to kind of memorialize what we could or should be thinking about and reflecting back on September 11th. And I'm taking my son to New York this weekend. I haven't been there since, so see what I think. Ask me next week if my junior speech made any sense.
So, Lynanne,
Yeah.
tell me something about when you were service corps president that you thought was really fun. Because it's the best day.
It is the best day. I mean, I think that it's like it is an opportunity to be with your peers in a different way and doing something different than sitting in a classroom. And I think that you can see people in a different element. I think that's fun to see your friends and be able to do something together and be able to reflect on it that is different. Trying to think.
I won't hold you anymore. Can you think of something, or I don't want to think?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not getting in a car accident, being able to, you're here, so you've already done like half the work. No, I think just taking in the community, being with your friends and your peers, and seeing how you can rely on one another to kind of get the job done. Because I know so many of you excel in the academic space and in this building and on the playing fields, but it'll be nice to see and celebrate people's strengths as you guys help others today. So congrats to you and enjoy your day. It's just a little drop and it's the beginning. And I appreciate you listening to me and talking with me this morning.